The day began like any other for Ethan Cole, a rancher whose life had become a rhythm of silence and survival. The sun rose over the dusty plains of Wyoming, stretching golden fingers across fields that hadn't yielded a good harvest in years. The fences were broken, the cattle were thin, and the debt collector's letters stacked like tombstones on his kitchen table. Ethan had stopped dreaming long ago. He worked, he ate little, he slept less, just enough to keep the ranch breathing. But that morning, he saddled his horse and rode into town, not knowing his life was about to change forever. At the town square, a crowd had gathered: rough-voiced men, tired farmers, and townsfolk drawn by the cruel curiosity of a debt auction. A widower's land and belongings were being sold to pay off his loans. Ethan knew that feeling, the taste of failure that never left your throat. But what made him stop was not the auctioneer's shout, it was the girl standing beside the wooden platform. She looked about 19, thin as a reed, her hands clenched together in shame. Her name was Lila Mae Carter, and she was being offered not as property, but as part of her father's desperate attempt to save their family. Her father's land was gone, the house taken, and now some local rancher had twisted the law, demanding repayment by taking Lila as a housekeeper. The crowd saw it as business. Ethan saw it as cruelty. Lila's eyes, wide and terrified, met his. Something inside him, something long buried, stirred. Ethan had come to town to sell his last 2 horses. He wasn't there to save anyone. But when the auctioneer barked, "Who'll cover Carter's debt for the girl's service?" and a drunken rancher named Ben Tucker stepped forward with a grin that made Ethan's stomach turn, he felt his pulse roar. Before he realized it, his hand went up. "I'll pay the debt," Ethan said quietly. The crowd turned. Ben sneered. "You can't even feed your own horses, Cole. You gonna buy yourself a maid now?" Ethan ignored him, reaching for his wallet, his voice steady. "She's not a maid. She's a person. I'll take care of it." Lila's father, broken and trembling, fell to his knees. "You'd do that, Ethan, for a stranger?" Ethan looked at Lila, saw fear, confusion, and hope battling in her eyes. "Auntie, no stranger worth less than mercy," he said. By noon, the papers were signed. Lila was free from the men who had planned to take her. Ethan handed over every dollar he had, leaving himself with barely enough for supper. As they walked away from the square, the sun beat down like fire, and the girl beside him kept silent, clutching a small satchel of clothes. "You don't owe me anything," Ethan said softly. "We'll figure things out. You can stay at the ranch till you find your footing." She nodded, voice trembling. "Why did you do it, Mr. Cole? You don't even know me." Ethan looked ahead, his jaw tightening. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything, and no one deserves to be sold for it." Back at the ranch, the house was small, worn by wind and time. Lila helped without being asked, sweeping floors, cooking stew, tending to the chickens. She didn't complain, didn't cry. Ethan noticed her quiet strength, the way she looked out the window each evening as though searching for something lost. That night, as the wind howled through the plains, Ethan sat by the fire, staring into the flames. He hadn't felt another soul's presence in his home for years. And now, this young woman he barely knew had filled the silence with warmth he didn't realize he'd missed. But gossip spreads faster than wind in a small town. By morning, whispers began. Cole bought himself a girl. Guess loneliness finally broke him. When the preacher stopped by, his voice careful but firm, Ethan knew he had to face it. "Ethan," he said, "you did a good thing saving her. But people will talk. A young woman living alone with a man at 1T sit right. Ethan sighed. I know. But I didn't do this for talk. Lila overheard. She came forward, pale but resolute. If it'll protect your name, Mr. Cole, I'll leave. Ethan shook his head. No. You've been through enough. I won't send you back to nothing. Then the preacher said softly, there's another way. A simple ceremony. No one can judge what's done under God's eyes. Lila's breath caught. Marriage. Ethan looked at her, a flicker of fear, respect, and something deeper in his chest. Only if you want it? It won't change your freedom. You can leave whenever you wish. She held his gaze, tears shining. You gave me my life back, Ethan. Maybe it's time I start living it with gratitude and trust. By sunset, under a sky burning gold and crimson, the small chapel doors creaked open. Only the preacher, 2 witnesses, and the sound of crickets stood by. Ethan wore his old hat and cleanest shirt. Lila wore a borrowed white dress, simple, worn, but glowing in the dying light. When the preacher asked, "Do you take this man?" Lila's voice didn't tremble. "I do." When Ethan answered, his throat tightened. "I do." And as they stepped out into the fading sun, a warm wind swept across the prairie, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of new beginnings. Weeks turned into months. Lila tended the garden, sang softly while hanging laundry, and brought laughter back to the porch where silence once ruled. Ethan repaired fences with a lightness he hadn't felt in years. But the real change came one cold morning when a storm nearly tore the barn apart. Ethan rushed into the wind to save the cattle, and Lila followed without hesitation, holding the lantern. When a beam cracked and nearly fell, she pushed him aside, taking the blow on her shoulder. He caught her before she hit the ground, shouting her name through the rain. "Lila. Why would you?" She looked up, rain streaming down her face. "Because you saved me once. It was my turn." That moment broke something inside Ethan, the walls he'd built, the loneliness he'd worn like armor. He held her close, whispering, "No more debts between us. Not ever." Spring came, and with it, life. The ranch began to thrive again, small miracles born from hard work and faith. The townsfolk who once whispered now nodded with quiet respect. They saw not scandal, but a partnership, 2 souls who had found purpose in each other. Lila often said, "Maybe God doesn't give us what we want. He gives us what we need." And Ethan would smile, looking out at the fields, thinking how right she was. Years later, when their story spread across counties about the struggling rancher who saved a girl and married her before sunset, people told it as a tale of love. But to Ethan and Lila, it was something simpler. It was a story about 2 broken hearts choosing kindness and finding home in the process. Moral: sometimes love doesn't begin with romance. It begins with mercy and grows into something neither heart expected, but both needed.